The average British family spends about £4 a week on bread. Over a year, that's £200 on something that might be actively harming their health. Stand in the bread aisle at any UK supermarket and you're surrounded by marketing psychology. Brown packaging suggests wholesomeness. Seeds scattered across the top promise nutrition. Words like natural, whole grain, and seeded create health halos that have nothing to do with what's actually inside the bag. Right now, I'm going to walk you through 8 UK supermarket breads that look healthy but are actually ultra-processed nonsense, what's really inside them that manufacturers don't want you noticing, and most importantly, what you should be buying instead. Stick around until the end because I'm sharing my exact label reading method that spots fake bread in seconds without requiring a degree in food science. Let's start with the biggest offender, a bread so aggressively marketed as healthy that doctors have been known to recommend it. Number 8. Kingsmill Great Everyday. Kingsmill launched Great Everyday with genius positioning, white bread texture with wholemeal nutrition. The packaging screams health claims like source of protein, source of fibre, and no artificial colours or flavours. Schools recommended it, health visitors suggested it, parents grabbed multi-packs thinking they'd found the holy grail, bread their kids would actually eat that wasn't nutritionally bankrupt. Here's what nobody checks. That added protein amongst the ingredients isn't from whole grains naturally containing protein. It's wheat protein isolate extracted, processed, and dumped back in to manipulate the nutrition panel. It's the bread equivalent of removing vitamins from food, then adding synthetic versions back and claiming you've fortified it. The fibre comes from added wheat bran, not from using actual wholemeal flour. They've taken white flour, stripped of nutrients during refining, then sprinkled bran back in like seasoning. Your digestive system doesn't process isolated bran the same way it processes intact whole grains. And that texture, unnaturally soft, stays fresh for a week, bounces back when you squeeze it. That's vegetable fat and emulsifiers creating artificial structure. Real bread firms up after a day because it's actual food. This stays soft because preservatives have made it inhospitable to bacteria. If bacteria won't eat it, why should your children? The really insidious part is how this bread has normalized the idea that healthy bread should taste and feel like white bread. An entire generation of children now expects bread to be pillowy, soft, and faintly sweet. When they encounter real whole grain bread with texture and substance, they reject it as weird because Kingsmill has reset their baseline expectations. And here's the economic reality. This loaf costs about £1.40. Seems reasonable until you realise you're paying for wheat protein, isolate, emulsifiers, and preservatives that cost pennies in bulk. The actual wheat content is minimal. You're funding marketing budgets and shareholder dividends, not quality ingredients. But if you think that's bad, wait until you see what this next brand is hiding behind its wholesome imagery. Number 7. Warburtons Milk Roll. Marketed as a lunchbox staple, positioned as softer and more nutritious than standard white rolls. The packaging emphasizes made with milk, as though dairy automatically elevates bread into health food territory. The milk content is about 4%. You're not getting meaningful calcium or protein from that trace amount. What you are getting is marketing permission to charge 20 pence more per pack while parents convince themselves this is somehow better than standard rolls. But here's where it gets worse. These contain palm oil and rapeseed oil. Neither belongs in bread. They're there to extend shelf life and create that pillowy softness that makes the rolls feel premium. Those oils are polyunsaturated fats that oxidize during baking and storage. By the time you're making sandwiches, you're eating degraded fats that your liver has to process. Real bread doesn't need added fats because proper fermentation and gluten development create texture naturally. Ever wonder why these rolls feel so light and airy, almost like you're eating clouds? That's not a quality baking technique. That's what happens when dough is pumped full of air during industrial mixing, creating maximum volume from minimum ingredients. Bakers call it slack dough, optimized to produce the most sellable units per batch of flour. The shelf life is particularly telling. These rolls last a week in the packet without moulding or going stale. Real rolls made with just flour, water, yeast and salt would be rock hard by day 3. The fact that Warburtons milk rolls maintain that same spongy texture for 7 days tells you everything about how processed they are. Now, this next bread has fooled even health-conscious shoppers who actually read labels. Number 6. Hovis Seed Sensations. Hovis trades on heritage, Victorian-era branding, traditional imagery, the promise of proper bread from a company that's supposedly been doing this since 1886. Seed Sensations launched as their premium health range, packaging covered in seeds like sunflower, pumpkin, linseed, suggesting that this is bread for people who care about nutrition. But check what you're actually buying: wheat flour, water, seeds at 10%, wheat protein, yeast, salt, vegetable fat, flour treatment agent, emulsifiers, preservatives. Those seeds on top and scattered through the loaf make up 1/10 of the product. 90% is the same processed bread base as their standard range. The seeds are there for appearance and marketing, not nutrition. 10% seed content means you're getting about 3 grams of seeds per slice. That's less than half a teaspoon. The omega-3 content they imply you're getting is negligible, and those seeds aren't even integrated properly. They sit in the bread like decorative elements because the dough structure is artificial. Real seeded bread incorporates seeds during kneading so they're distributed throughout. This just has them pressed into the surface and scattered randomly through an engineered loaf. The flour is still refined white flour, despite whole grain suggestions in the marketing. This is white bread with seeds sprinkled in and brown colouring added. The fibre content is marginally better than that of white bread, but nowhere near that of actual wholemeal. Here's what really gets me about this bread. Hovis has spent decades building trust through heritage marketing. Then they use that accumulated trust to sell you industrial bread with a handful of seeds thrown in. The seeds themselves aren't even particularly high quality. They're commodity seeds bought in bulk, not specially sourced varieties chosen for nutrition. Compare the taste to bread from a proper bakery using freshly ground linseeds and pumpkin seeds. The difference is mind-blowing. Fresh seeds have flavour, oils that haven't oxidized, and nutrients that haven't degraded during months of storage. But at least Hovis is honest about being a mass-market brand. This next one has convinced people it's practically a healthy food. Number 5. Allinson Wholemeal. Allinson positions itself as the wholesome choice. British brand, established heritage, packaging emphasising 100% wholemeal, like that's the only thing that matters. Schools use this for sandwiches. Hospitals serve it to patients. It's become shorthand for the healthy bread option in institutional catering. Yes, true to its claims, it's actually wholemeal flour. But that flour has been milled so fine it behaves like white flour in your digestive system. The bran and germ are technically present, but they've been pulverized into powder. Your body doesn't process ultrafine wholemeal the same way it processes coarsely ground whole grain. The glycemic index of this bread is only marginally lower than that of white bread. You still get a significant blood sugar spike because particle size matters. Fine flour, even wholemeal, digests quickly. Coarse flour digests slowly. And they've added vital wheat gluten. That's processed protein extracted from wheat and added back to strengthen the dough artificially. Real wholemeal bread develops structure from proper kneading and fermentation. This shortcuts the process with isolated gluten. The vegetable fat is there because wholemeal bread naturally firms up faster than white bread. Instead of accepting that real bread has a shorter, fresh window, they've added fat to keep it artificially soft and emulsifiers to make sure it stays that way. You know, that slightly spongy, uniform texture wholemeal supermarket bread has? That's not how real wholemeal bread feels. It should be denser, with more resistance, and it should firm up noticeably after a day. This stays soft for a week because it's been engineered for shelf life, not nutrition. And here's something most people don't realise. Wholemeal flour naturally contains oils from the wheat germ. Those oils go rancid relatively quickly, which is why real wholemeal bread has a short shelf life. The fact that Allinson stays fresh for over a week suggests either that those oils have been partially removed during milling or that preservatives are preventing oxidation. Either way, you're not getting the full nutritional benefit of whole grain. Alright, we're halfway through, and if you're still watching, you've probably got at least 2 of these breads in your kitchen right now. Don't feel bad, that's exactly how this works. These companies spend millions on packaging psychology and health claims specifically designed to bypass your critical thinking. But the next 4 are where things get truly offensive, because these are breads specifically marketed to people trying to lose weight or manage health conditions. If someone you know is buying diabetic-friendly or slimming bread thinking it's helping, they need to see what's coming next. Send this their way before they waste another tenner on engineered nonsense. Let's keep going. Number 4. Weight Watchers Molted Danish Bread. Weight Watchers, WW, has a bread range specifically designed to fit their point system. This malted Danish variant is positioned as indulgent tasting but diet-friendly, giving you the taste you love without derailing your progress. The fiber content is artificially elevated by adding wheat bran, not from using whole grain flour, but by sprinkling bran back into refined flour. That's not the same thing nutritionally because you're missing all the other components of the whole grain. And despite Danish in the name, this is about 5% rye flour. Real Danish rye bread is predominantly rye, dense, dark, with a distinctive sour tang from long fermentation. This tastes vaguely malty because they've added malted wheat flour as flavoring. The texture is completely wrong too. Proper rye bread is compact and heavy. This is light and airy because it's mostly white wheat flour with rye added as garnish. The whole thing is a performance of Danish bread without actually being Danish bread. But here's the real problem. This bread is designed to game the Weight Watchers point system, not to nourish you. It's low in everything. Low fat, low sugar, low calories. That sounds great until you realize it's also low in actual food. The truly frustrating part is that people buying this bread are genuinely trying to improve their health. They're making what they believe is a responsible choice, following a system they trust, and they're being sold ultra-processed nonsense disguised as diet food. It's exploitation dressed up as wellness. Now, this next one targets a different vulnerable group with equally cynical marketing. Number 3, Genius Gluten. Free brown seeded bread. Unless you have celiac disease, gluten-free bread is a scam. But even if you do need gluten-free options, Genius is taking the absolute piss. This costs about 3 quid for 400 grams. That's nearly £8 per kilo for bread that tastes like sweetened cardboard and has the texture of dense foam. Because gluten provides structure in traditional bread, removing it means adding replacement binders. Psyllium husk, xanthan gum, methyl cellulose. These are fibers and thickeners creating a fake structure. The result is bread that's higher in sugar and fat than normal bread, with less protein and fiber despite the seeds sprinkled on top. Those seeds make up maybe 5% of the loaf. The rest is starch held together with industrial binders. And nutritionally, this is terrible for blood sugar. Refined starches like tapioca and maize digest incredibly quickly, faster than wheat flour. The glycemic index is higher than that of white bread despite marketing suggesting it's healthier. You know that slightly sweet taste gluten-free bread has? Sugar is added to mask the flavor of all the starches and binders. Real bread doesn't need sugar because fermentation develops flavor naturally. And for people with actual celiac disease, this is what they're stuck with unless they can find or make proper gluten-free bread from whole grain alternatives like buckwheat or teff. Genius and similar brands have monopolized the gluten-free market with products that technically meet the requirement, gluten-free, whilst being nutritionally bankrupt. It's the minimum viable product marketed at maximum price. But wait, because this next brand has convinced health-conscious shoppers, it's practically medicinal. Number 2, Vogel's Soya and Linseed. Vogel's is positioned as the premium healthy choice. Distinctive packaging, higher price point, health food shop stock, it alongside organic vegetables and overpriced supplements. The Soya and Linseed variant costs about $2.70 for a loaf and is marketed as high protein, omega-3 rich, and made with original grains. But the truth is that the soya beans and linseed make up about 15% combined, so 85% of this bread is wheat flour. Much of it refined with seeds added for marketing purposes, and they've added vital wheat gluten again. This is a pattern in healthy breads, processed protein isolate dumped in to boost protein numbers on the nutrition panel without actually using protein-rich whole ingredients. The texture is weird too, dense and heavy, but not in the satisfying way real whole grain bread is. It's heavy because it's packed with seeds and kibbled wheat, not because of proper fermentation and grain quality. That slightly sour tang. Vinegar has been added to mimic sourdough flavor without doing actual sourdough fermentation. Real sourdough develops complexity through days of fermentation. This gets tartness from a squirt of vinegar added during mixing. Here's what frustrates me most about Vogels. They've positioned themselves as the thinking person's bread choice. The packaging is understated, the health claims are subtle rather than screaming, and it's stocked in places that suggest quality. But underneath that sophisticated marketing is the same industrial bread formula as cheaper alternatives, just with better branding and a higher price tag. And finally, we've reached the absolute worst offender in British supermarket bread. Number 1. Bergen soya and linseed. This is it. The absolute worst grocery item you can buy when it comes to bread in 2026. Bergen soya and linseed. It was everywhere, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and it's been around for decades. People trusted it because it's familiar, because it's always been positioned as the healthy choice, because surely something this established must be legitimate. But it was not. People realised it was so bad that in 2022, some versions were discontinued by Allied Bakery, but they can still be found in a few stores. The base ingredient is refined wheat flour, not wholemeal, not whole grain. Refined white flour with bits mixed in to create the illusion of whole grain bread. Those soya beans and linseeds make up about 12% combined. The rest is white flour, added gluten, and processing aids. You're buying white bread with seeds scattered through it, marketed as a health food. The protein content is elevated artificially with vital wheat gluten. The fiber comes from added seeds, not from whole grain flour. The omega-3s they imply you're getting are minimal because linseed content is so low. And that texture, dense, slightly rubbery, stays soft for over a week. That's vegetable oil and emulsifiers creating a fake structure. Real bread containing this many seeds would be crumbly and firm. This stays together because chemistry is holding it up, not proper baking technique. But here's why this is the number 1 offender. Bergen has convinced an entire generation that this is what healthy bread looks like. People actively seek it out. Nutritionists recommend it. Diabetics choose it, thinking it's better for their blood sugar. It's not better. The glycemic index is only marginally lower than that of white bread because the flour base is still refined. You get a blood sugar spike, just slightly delayed by the seed's slowing of digestion. And the price? About $2.40 for 800 grams. That's £3 per kilo for factory bread that costs about 40 pence in ingredients to produce, compared to actual whole grain sourdough from a bakery, proper flour, real fermentation, no added gluten or emulsifiers. Costs about $2.50 for a similar sized loaf and is actual bread made by people who understand bread. The longevity of this bread tells you everything you need to know. I've had a loaf of Bergen sit on my counter for 10 days without moulding. 10 days. It eventually went stale but never developed mould. Real bread moulds within 3 to 4 days because it's organic matter that bacteria and fungi will consume. When they won't touch it, what does that tell you about its biological value? Bergen has been the best-selling healthy bread in UK supermarkets for over 15 years. Millions of families have made it their default choice, feeding it to their children daily, believing they're making a responsible nutritional decision. The scale of the deception is staggering. We're talking about literally tons of ultra-processed white bread disguised as health food being consumed every single week. Right, I promised alternatives. Here's what's worth your money in the UK bread market. Number 1. Tesco Finest Sourdough Boule. Proper sourdough made in store with 4 ingredients: flour, water, salt, and sourdough starter. No yeast, no improvers, no emulsifiers. Costs about $2.20 for a large loaf. The crust is genuinely crusty. The crumb has irregular holes from real fermentation. It firms up after a day because it's actual food. The glycemic index of yeasted bread is lower than yeasted bread because long fermentation breaks down starches. The organic acids developed during fermentation improve nutrient bioavailability and digestibility. Available in most large Tesco stores. Look for it in the bakery section near the entrance. The beauty of this bread is that you can actually see the fermentation. Those irregular holes throughout the crumb, that's where carbon dioxide bubbles form during proving. The slightly tangy taste, that's lactic acid bacteria working on the flour over 12 to 24 hours. This is what bread has been for thousands of years before industrial bakeries decided to optimize it into nutritional irrelevance. Number 2. Local bakery sourdough. Find a proper bakery, not Greg's, an actual artisan bakery where they mix and prove dough on premises. Their sourdough will be flour, water, salt. Maybe some added seeds or grains, but the base should be simple. Costs between £2.50 and £4 depending on location. The texture will be completely different from supermarket bread. Chewier, more complex flavor, genuine crust that shatters when you cut it. Yes, it's more expensive per loaf, but you'll eat less of it because it's actually satisfying. 2 slices of real sourdough fill you up more than 4 slices of Bergen because there's actual substance there. Talk to the bakers, ask about their process. Good bakeries are proud of their methods and happy to explain how they make bread. If they're cagey about ingredients or process, that's a red flag. Real bakers love talking about fermentation times, flour sources, and hydration levels because that's their craft. Number 3, make your own. Bread is flour, water, salt, and thyme. That's it. You don't need special equipment or skills. A basic sourdough starter costs nothing, just flour and water left to ferment. Mix it with more flour and water, leave overnight, shape, prove, bake. Total hands-on time is about 15 minutes spread over 24 hours. The ingredients cost about 40p per loaf. You get bread that's fresher, tastier and more nutritious than anything you can buy for under £3. And once you've tasted real bread you made from 4 ingredients, you'll never look at Bergen the same way again. There's something deeply satisfying about making your own bread. The process forces you to slow down and engage with food in a way supermarket shopping doesn't. You understand why bread needs time to ferment, why it should firm up after a day, and why it shouldn't stay soft for a week. These aren't flaws, they're features of real food. Plus, your house smells incredible while it's baking. That aroma is from Maillard reactions, creating hundreds of flavor compounds as the crust forms. Supermarket bread doesn't smell like anything because industrial ovens don't allow proper crust development. They prioritize even browning and consistent appearance over actual flavor. Now, I'm going to give you a quick tip on how to spot a fake healthy bread in a few seconds. Right, here's the system. Pick up any loaf claiming to be healthy, turn it over, read the ingredients. Step 1, count the ingredients. Real bread has 4 to 6 ingredients maximum. If the list runs longer than that, question why. Each additional ingredient is probably a processing aid, preservative, or synthetic additive. Step 2. Check the first ingredient. Should be whole grain flour or wholemeal flour. If it says wheat flour without whole or wholemeal, you're buying refined flour with bits added back. Kibbled wheat or wheat pieces aren't whole grain, they're fragments used for texture. Step 3. Look for added gluten. Wheat gluten, vital wheat gluten, wheat protein. These indicate the bread couldn't hold together without isolated protein. Real bread develops structure from proper kneading and fermentation. Step 4. Check for fats and oils. Bread doesn't need added fat. If you see vegetable oil, palm oil, or rapeseed oil, that's there to extend shelf life and fake texture. Butter in enriched breads like brioche is fine. Industrial oils in healthy bread are not. Step 5. Look for the word emulsifier. Emulsifiers are added to make ingredients mix that shouldn't naturally mix, or to extend shelf life. Real bread doesn't need them. If you see E numbers like E472E or E481, those are emulsifiers. Same function, different name. Step 6. Check for preservatives. Calcium propionate is the big one. It prevents mold but also indicates the bread is designed to last weeks on a shelf. Real bread goes stale in days. That's normal. That's what bread does when it's actual food. Step 7. Question health claims on the packaging. Source of fibre often means they've added isolated bran. Source of protein means added gluten. Omega-3 means they sprinkled some seeds in. These claims are designed to distract you from reading ingredients. Marketing is what's on the front. Truth is what's in the small print. Step 8. The squeeze test. Pick up the loaf and gently squeeze it. Real bread has resistance and springs back slowly. Ultra-processed bread compresses easily and stays compressed or bounces back instantly like foam. If it feels like you're squeezing a sponge, put it back. Step 9. Check the sell-by date. Real bread has a shelf life of 3 to 5 days from baking. If the sell-by date is 10 days out or more, that bread has been engineered for longevity, not nutrition. The sad truth is that Britain has a bread problem. We've allowed industrial bakeries to redefine what bread is, and an entire generation has grown up thinking soft, sweet, artificially preserved loaves are normal. They're not normal. They're engineered products optimized for profit margins, shelf life, and mass production. Real bread is simple, perishable, and requires some basic understanding of fermentation. The only barrier is that we've been convinced bread needs to stay soft for 10 days and taste slightly sweet. It doesn't. That's what ultra-processing delivers. Real bread firms up, develops character as it ages, and tastes like grain instead of sugar. So here's my question. Which of these breads is currently in your kitchen? Have you been buying Bergen thinking it's healthy? Spending £3 on Genius because gluten-free sounds virtuous? Drop a comment below because I want to know which revelation hit hardest. The added gluten, the fake sourdough flavouring, the fact that 100% wholemeal doesn't mean what you thought it meant, and if this video just stops someone you know from wasting money on fake healthy bread whilst thinking they're making good choices, send it their way. Everyone deserves to know what they're actually eating when they make toast.